For the City Council meeting of the City of Bel Air Beach, Florida, Monday, March 4th, 2019 at 6 p.m. We all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Academy, call the roll, please.
Councilmember Mark Bean.
Here.
Councilmember Todd Harper.
Here.
Councilmember John Petrowski.
Here.
Councilmember Wanda Schweer. Councilmember Jody Shirley. Here. Vice Mayor Glenn Gunn.
Here.
Mayor Leslie Ford Otero.
Here.
City Manager Lynn Reeves.
Here.
Finance Officer Melanie Kuzona. Here. City Attorney Paul Marino.
Here.
Thank you. First item is the approval of the agenda. I'd like to ask that a motion be made to move item number 11 up, which is the CAFR report, to say between 3 and 4, so that Ms. Bittinger, she has a commitment that she needs to get to.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Item number 2, a presentation by Mayor Bill Queen regarding the Big C Beautification Committee proposal. Mayor Queen?
Good evening, everyone.
Evening. Thanks for coming.
Absolutely. I'm going to read you the letter that the Big C Beautification Committee sent out. The committee is made up of 3 mayors, myself, Nick Simons, and Pat Serrano. Over the past several months, the Big C Beautification Committee has had several discussions with retired County Administrator Mark Woodard regarding the number 1 priority of the Big C as it relates to Gulf Boulevard beautification. The primary objective was to complete the undergrounding utilities on Gulf Boulevard with penny for money. An allocation of $35 million was agreed upon, as it is the same amount of penny 3 money that was distributed for the initial Gulf Boulevard East Side project. It was also recommended that the penny 4 project should be completed as one project under the direction of Pinellas County, as economies of scale should reduce the projected cost. As we move forward toward these discussions, the cities of Clearwater and Indian Shores, which have completed all of their underground, requested some additional beautification work be included in the penny 4 funding. Both cities wanted to complete their existing plans for beautification in the amounts of $500,000 for Indian Shores and $750,000 for Clearwater. These requests were endorsed by the Big City. The Beautification Committee and County Liaison Brian Lowak worked together to formulate a plan to accomplish each of the city's goals. The agreed upon proposal would require each of the remaining 9 municipalities to contribute $138,888.89 if the project estimate exceeds the $35 million that is currently allocated. This amount would allow Clearwater and Indian Shores to complete their beautification plans alongside the undergrounding of the other 9 beach communities. The proposed investment of each city would send a clear signal to the county not only of the beautification importance in regarding of competing for tourism dollars, but also the Big C's commitment to the project. There are different methodologies to calculate the contribution amounts, but considering the enterprise as a whole and the impact on the entire boulevard, the proposal is a fair compromise considering the proposed contribution is far below the cost each city would incur trying to complete the projects individually. Considering the collaborative nature and scope of this project, the contribution of each town is a good faith investment into our tourism future. Pinellas County beaches need to continue to be enhanced and improved to compete with other tourist destinations throughout Florida. Yes, ma'am.
Is the $138,000, would that be collected from both Bel Air Beach and Bel Air Shore?
Yes. It's the 9 municipalities.
Each, okay.
And it's clear, this is not something we're asking for now. This is just if it goes above the cost, this is sort of a heads up. This might happen, but it's not something that we're looking for right now. It's several years down the road.
That's correct. We don't know the timeline on when the project can be started, but we do know this. The last project that we did under penny 3 money, the money was broken down over a period of 7 years, with the majority of the money being done at the end of the project, which all of us waited to do it to the end of the project. This one will be just the opposite of that. Everything will be done up front. So this is a much better way to do the project than what we did before, where we piecemealed.
And also doing it as one project rather than each city doing their own.
Right. The $138,000, if you've done the math, you realize that it's $1.25 million. it makes up the difference of what Clearwater and Indian Shores did for their beautification, which we told the county that most of the money would be spent for the underground. We're kind of getting estimates right now that we think it'll come in at 40 million, something like that, and we're hoping that our contributions will help the county make up the difference, or they will find other projects to fund at the same time that this project's being done, where, again, the economies of scale work and we get everything done at one time. Yes, sir.
The likelihood that it will exceed the 35 million, what's the level of confidence? You think it's probably going to?
Yes, yeah. From all the data that we've got on the projects that we're doing now, it looks like it'll go over that a little bit. I don't know how much, but I'm hoping that we can do other projects and we can find other buckets of money to help us in that shortfall. But we won't know until we get in there and we start getting the estimates back. But I will say this to you. One of the primary reasons for us to do this was aesthetics until Mexico Beach. And when that hurricane hit up there, Duke Energy came back and told us that they found out that the maintenance costs were a lot less than what they had thought because of the damage there, and it did not do a lot of damage to the underground utilities. But all the up utilities were all wiped out. So that's another factor that's come into play to help us out here.
And the timeline for when do you think this would?
We don't have a timeline. Brian's working on it now. We're working very closely with the county to start getting the estimates in. There's several companies that are very interested in it, so we should know something. I would say that this project, we were looking, when we talked with Mark, within 3 years of the penny starting. The penny starts in 2020.
And so when are you looking for affirmation from the individual municipalities?
All we really want is just that you're in the game and you're willing to go this route with us and just give us a positive so that we can go back to the county and tell them, yes, we're all on board and we're willing to do this. Again, this is kind of an enticement for the county to stay the course with us and make this thing happen. This is the Barry Islands Governmental Council resolution that we made. The Barry Island Governmental Council supports the undergrounding of Gulf Boulevard as one consolidated project, with Pinellas County acting as the project coordinator, supplemented by representatives from each municipality. After the binding estimates were established, the understanding is that Penny 4 also be distributed, with Indian Shores receiving $500,000 and Clearwater receiving $750,000 for additional beautification projects. So that was the resolution that the Big C endorsed. What we're trying to do now goes a step beyond that so that we can continue this project for sure.
No, did anybody approach Duke Energy about subsidizing any of this? Because I know in Jacksonville, after Irma, there was a big push to Duke Energy and Florida Power and Light to actually do the undergrounding without cost to the cities.
That's the beautiful part of working with Pinellas County. That will be them to work with Duke to make that happen. And they are looking at it. And there's legislation. I think there's legislation out there trying to go down that road for us.
Should we be lobbying for that legislation?
Absolutely.
Do we have any bill numbers on that yet?
Not yet.
You'll let us know when you've got it
Yes,
right.
ma'am.
Thank you.
Any other?
Mayor and Council, the consultant has already been hired, and they sent us something from Pinellas County. I got an email. KCI is doing a feasibility study along that portion.
Okay.
So I don't know if you do that, but
I have not seen that.
this email just came to me on Friday, so they are looking at the costs, and they're going to come back and give that feasibility in the estimate. So the county's already hired someone to look at it, KCI.
So when Brian comes back and tells us that, we'll do a presentation at the Big C explaining all that. And I would encourage all of you, if you can, when you see these items come up at the Big C, please attend those meetings because we want the input from everybody.
I mean, I know this, question for you, I know this is kind of, past history, but why are we in the state that our city has not been underground? We've got this thing for Pinellas, and we're on the second haunch of it, and we still have utilities above ground. Why is that?
You're not directing that question to me, are you?
Is that, I'm assuming that's a question to the city. I mean, obviously, there was enough funds to underground some of the other municipalities.
No.
Why have we not?
They did not use penny money. They did, I know Indian Shores took out a loan. They have bonds out there, they paid for it, then they're still paying it off, so.
Yeah, if you're talking about Clearwater or Indian Shores,
Yeah.
they borrow the money and they paid it themselves. We undergrounded our town on our money back 7 years ago, 8 years ago. And it was a lot cheaper than to do it. And as soon as, we should have done Gulf Boulevard at that time, it would have been a quarter of the cost that it is now. But there are, several cities have done it, but they've used their own tax dollars to do it.
So back to our staff, we use our penny for medians, is that crosswalks, is that what we use the penny for?
Actually, let's see, it was 1.5, about 1.7 million of our take is being used for underground. We're doing the east side, or the west side of Gulf Boulevard, all the crosswires.
That's going forward.
That's going forward, that's in our current money. The marina, all of that, the crosswalks, the bicycle racks that we had to have for Petrie Nourishment, and the entrance signs. That's all the money that we utilized.
Excuse me, I think the point is that the penny money was for Gulf Boulevard beautification period and could not be used off of Gulf Boulevard.
Yeah, but we're talking about underground, that is the.
I don't think your microphone is on.
I'm sorry, I've got a cold, so that's, my question goes back to that, is really, why wasn't that, it obviously was in other municipalities an important hot item, and it is in our town, clearly, because we have residents paying to have their own utilities underground and on their private streets.
But we are doing that here. We have already paid Duke Energy, we've already paid Spectrum to take the crosswires down and to take the wires along the west side of Gulf Boulevard in our city and Bella Shores. Because part of our money that we utilized is Bella Shores money, that is, we're the city that expended it. There was an agreement made. But
So
no,
all the
we
money
are-
we're getting for penny, we're using for undergrounding, period, nothing else, correct?
No, they used it for crosswalks.
No, I mean going forward.
Oh, yeah, that's what the plan is. Everything else, well, we've got a little bit of beautification money, but we've already paid for the undergrounding on the west side of Gulf Boulevard. We've already paid the Spectre, or Bright House and Duke for those utilities. Right now, we're in the process of getting easements along that side of the street. We've got about half of them right now, and we're still working on them, and they're doing the design. So, yes, we spent roughly $1.7 million for underground. It wasn't enough to do the east side, and I know I went to the meeting that, I'm blanking his name now, Mark Woodard chaired and recommended that we do a group undergrounding for the rest of Gulf Boulevard, and every city attended that, to my knowledge.
So by the time we get to this 2020 penny, the 3-year plan of undergrounding, we will have had everything on the west side underground and all the crossings done. So we're just looking at the east side of
Right.
Gulf Boulevard as part of the Big C.
Right. Yeah, and that estimate was about $2.5 million at the time.
To finish your project was 2.9, I think.
Yes,
Yeah.
something like that.
In the other towns, they did the east side of the road. So a lot of that penny 3 money was used for different projects in towns to do the undergrounding. And most of them spent the money on the underground.
My first take on this thing, having just spent the better part of 2 years just trying to get it in a residential area, was somebody's finally woken up, smelled the coffee, and seen the economies of scale and banding together and getting some political clout behind this thing. And I'm all for it. It's about time we did it. Now, having been through the different arguments for methodologies, for apportionment and assessment, yeah, there would be wiggle room here, but I'm all for, let's strike while the iron's hot and get this thing rolling.
Just for your knowledge, so that you know this actually started in 2000, and it was called Vision 2000 by the county. I became the mayor in 2005. It took us almost 5 years to get movement for that penny 3 money. And at the estimates that we had then, it was $105 million to do Gulf Boulevard. So we're coming along with it pretty good, but it's been slow, incremental steps.
been 14 years in Bellevue Estates Island, so I understand the pain, and that's why I'm saying, they put the spurs to this and get moving.
Any other comments from council? No? Okay. Thank you very much, Bill, appreciate your comments.
See you.
Item 2 on the agenda, item 3, excuse me, presentation by Ellis County Sheriff's Office. Sergeant Stephen Tachi, right? Did I get it? My bad, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. It's a difficult one. It's Stephen Tacey.
Case.
I'm here to present the statistical data for January from the Sheriff's Office. You guys do have a copy of this, correct?
Yes.
Starting on page 1 for January, first page, we have one larceny. That was a political yard sign. Page 2, we had 7 people arrested in the city of Bel Air Beach during January. The majority of that is driving related. You guys can read, driver's license suspended. There was one domestic battery. That battery was a vacationer. He and his girlfriend got in a fight during that altercation. Page 3, there was 762 events in the city of Bel Air Beach, 853 responding units to the city. As you look at the deputy activity, I always like to point out the top portion, pretty much down to area check, with the exception of suspicious vehicle, is all self-initiated activity. Suspicious vehicle obviously could be called in by anyone reporting it, but a lot of times we'll check out of the vehicle and we'll say we're out with a suspicious vehicle, and that's how that happens. Page 4, there were no crashes in the city for January. There was a total of 167 citations, and that's 11 traffic citations, 21 parking citations, and 135 warnings. With that, are there any questions?
I have a question. We're still doing 91 directed patrols. Given the reduction in the number of problems that we have, would there be any justification to reduce the number of directed patrols and maybe increase the community contact?
Well, directed patrols are assigned to the city, I'm sure you know. Yes, that could. And community contacts, like I said last month, are this, and it's really could be one and the same in a lot of ways, other than the directed patrols are in our system. That makes sense. If the directed patrol is to come here and meet with the council or the city members, then that in itself would be community contact as well.
But more community interaction, meeting the neighbors. There's a lot to be said for the neighbors knowing who the deputies are who are patrolling.
I think there's more of that going on than you realize, that, there's a couple of deputies that just stop and give out dog biscuits or whatever, talk to.
It just doesn't get counted.
Like, it doesn't get counted, that's my point. Yeah, there's a lot.
I can make sure that we are doing that and we're getting credit for that. I know for Deputy Maldonado, he works from 6 to 6. I don't know how many want him. Stop it. Maybe 6 to 8, but
Stop and say hi if they see us walking our dogs, maybe.
That's
Yes,
what they
yes, ma'am.
generally do, yeah.
Any other questions?
I've got a question. I connected some of the numbers through the different pages. Page 3, we're talking about traffic stops. The second line, 175 traffic stops, 167 citations issued, but out of those, 8% of them, or 135, are just warnings. So I'm not an expert on crime and punishment, but I'm wondering what, are you really driving home the point, the psychology, part of the psychology is, yeah, you caught them, but it's probably not the first time they've ever been speeding or passing in the wrong lane or something like that. So is the point really being driven home?
I would say, for, this is me, 80% of the people I stop, you could see they're very nervous. And the stop itself can be an educational tool. We also have a tool in our computers when we run somebody or the car. It will show us how many times they've been stopped for a stop sign violation. So for us, for me specifically, every deputy has their own discretion, and I would not take that away from them. For me, if I stop you for a stop sign violation, and I see 2, 3 stop sign violations, you haven't learned. So that would be the way that I handle that sort of business. I can't speak on the other deputies, but I would say that 80%-ish is a verbal warning or a written warning it works. I do think so.
Thanks.
One question, I noticed that we moved one of the squad cars into Hibiscus, and I assume that's because of the traffic that is running through there in the late afternoon, people trying to avoid Golf Boulevard, is that?
I wish I could tell you I know why they moved it there. I don't know. I can get with
It's a city.
the day shift to find out, if you like.
Yeah, just kind of curious, and it was kind of two-part, and it's moved there, but are they able to detect speed and what have you when from those vehicles? There's no speed indicator or anything like that, tracking car count or anything like that? No?
I can answer that question.
Okay.
The reason the car was moved there is because we got several calls about suspicious vehicles in that area. So one of the day deputies asked, move the car there when it came back from maintenance, because that's what it was for a short period of time. Well, it was almost a month, because it wasn't First Street for a long time, but that's why it was moved there. And I will tell you, we've had 3 complaints about it being there already.
Well, I can tell you there are, I was Saturday afternoon walking Hibiscus, and there were several cars using that as a shortcut to bypass traffic, which it does, it's not really a shortcut by the time you stop all the stop signs and cut around, but they drive very fast through there, so that's the point of bringing it up, and I thought that's why we moved the car over possibly.
Yeah, I've got a question. I realize that the traffic from Clearwater Beach is excessive at times, in particular going into the beach in the daytime and coming out of the beach in the evening. Past week or so, I've noticed a significant number of individuals that are passing through the turn lanes, some of them at significant speeds, and I'm just curious to understand how the deputies patrol that area, especially when there's a really high density of cars, much less the idea of people acting irrationally in that type of manner.
I would go back to 167 traffic citations. I mean, they're out doing traffic throughout the whole lot of the shift. Again, for the majority of his shift, this is his busy time. After 10:30, 11 o'clock, traffic slows down quite a bit. Now spring break comes, that will change, like you're talking about. But yeah, it's absolutely wrong, and when we see it, we are addressing it.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is, well, it's item 11 in our books, the consideration of accepting the comprehensive annual financial report with Jeannie Bittinger from Davidson, Jamison, and Christine. Ms. Bittinger.
Thank you, Mayor. Really appreciate being moved up. So thank you sincerely to the Mayor and the Council. And also wanted to thank Lynn, our City Manager, and Patty, our Clerk, and of course Melanie for doing such an excellent job on this report. If we look at our opinion letter in the beginning, this is what is known as an unmodified opinion, which is the highest opinion we can render. It was a good year. I encourage the council to read the management discussion analysis, which starts on page 6, which gives you a good narrative of what happened during that year, and that is prepared by your finance director. Looking at page 21, which is on a full accrual basis, we see we actually, our change in net position was over $1 million. Remembering that is on a full accrual though, so that's somewhat deceptive because we actually run this city on a modified accrual basis as opposed to being concerned about the fixed assets and the debt. So are looking at a better portrayal probably is on page 24, where we look at, we actually had a net income in general fund before transfers of $427,000, but then we transferred $858,000 over to the capital projects for various projects. So our overall net income loss was actually somewhat of a loss this year, but we knew that going in. We had a lot of upfront consulting fees and also a lot of capital projects going on in this particular year. I don't want to read the whole report to you. I would encourage you to also look at, starting at page 67, which is the statistical section, because that gives you a good 10-year history of the city and the financial activity. Also want to, I'm very glad that the city has embarked on the path to have the Certificate of Achievement from the GFOA, that this your mayor and your council are to be commended for supporting this. Once upon a time, I had a lot of clients with certificates, and then a lot of clients, because it does take some extra money, and there are fees to be paid, and extra time on the part of the finance director. Melanie is stuck with this program and does an excellent job. It does take her time to prepare a report that's of this level that we can be assured, once again, we will get a Certificate of Achievement, where it goes to Chicago to the GFOA, is reviewed by 3 independent, the GFOA, the Government Finance Officers Association, and it'll be reviewed by 3 different reviewers throughout the country, none of whom can be from Florida, which is in the rules for the GFOA, and also a GFOA staff member. So for such a small municipality with a relatively small staff to embark on this program is very good. Are there any questions I can answer at this point?
Am I correct that we get some financial benefit from going through that program? We get better interest rates and things like that?
It is something that lenders definitely look at, absolutely. There is a payback. And just even the satisfaction, it's a good report card on the city, on the work that is done. Yes?
I've got one question, page 59.
59?
Halfway down the page, the city's total payroll in fiscal year was $407,000. The next sentence reads, the city's contributions were calculated using the participant's salary amount of $345,000. The difference between that $345,000 and the 407, is the 407 total personnel costs, including all the benefits?
No, it should be just total payroll per 940 per year, 941s should be that. And the difference, it looks like some of the people are not in the plan. When it says participant salary, which is less, is because not everyone is in the plan. Under the 401A plan, because that's what this is referring to.
Thank you.
Good question. Any other questions I can respond to?
I would commend the report. I read it cover to cover, and I particularly liked the overall summary. And the statistics section, starting on page 61, was exceptionally good read as well.
Thank you.
Very well
Thank you
done.
very much.
I have a question that's probably more directed to the city manager. On page 50, we're talking about the marina, and it looks like it will be fully depreciated in about 10 years. Is that, am I reading that correctly? You've got improvements other than buildings, and then less capital, less accumulated depreciation, so that the net is down like $46,000. Am I reading that correctly?
Well, you're right, Mayor, that it is pretty much fully depreciated at this point in time. I mean, it's going to probably about 10 years. I think that's a good estimate, right? Because if we're depreciating it at a rate of $4,060 a year, so about 10 years it would be fully depreciated, unless we, of course, add new assets.
And I guess my question was going to be, what plans do we have for dealing with this once it's fully depreciated? Will we replacing them, replacing docks and items, equipment along the way, or?
Excuse me. We've been accumulating funds to do upgrades to the marina, and at this point in time, I'm not sure when the last upgrade was done. I know it's been
4 or 5 years. I think.
4 or 5, maybe 6 years, at least that long. So we are accumulating funds annually, and the current is, I think we've got, Melanie might be able to answer that, 30,000 we started accumulating.
22,500.
Okay, that's what it's at. We're accumulating $7,500 a year. But if we do in the future look at other options for the marina, then we will have to find out how to pay for that and look at accumulating a higher level of funding.
I think the fact that it's due to be depreciated in about 10 years is probably something that needs to work into your ongoing strategic plan.
I'm sorry to digress. Going back to that page 59, you said that 407 number isn't for all employees. Can you put your finger on the number in this report that refers to the total personnel costs for fiscal year 17-18?
I don't, well, it's going to be a combined number, so we'd actually have to look at the trial balances.
What are we looking at, 59?
Yes, which is the, just.
So is it saying that the 401 retirement costs are higher than the payroll? Is that what we're saying here?
Yeah, I'm just looking for the total personnel costs for
Of total
fiscal
payroll?
year 17-18.
Okay, because there's certain items in payroll that are not qualified for retirement. So, for instance, this is older. For instance, Howard, he had bonuses that didn't go into it. So if you're looking at the city's contributions were at 345, 295. Anything else in payroll costs would include all your taxes, FICA, and those type of things. And those aren't going to be calculated for the purposes of pension costs.
Okay, the only reason I asked the question is because at the last council meeting, the city manager gave us a spreadsheet that gave a bottom line for total personnel costs budgeted for fiscal year 19. And all I want to do is, I'd like to see the comparative number for fiscal year 17-18.
Well, he's actually having me put some of that together, and I can do a side-by-side year by year. But when you talk about, when you talk about total payroll costs, you're going to be including a whole lot of things other than pension. You're going to have, that's going to include the healthcare costs, the workers' comp cost, all that other stuff.
Exactly, total personnel costs, everything, retirement, health benefits, insurance.
That's not going to show up here in this capper, but I definitely have that, and we will get it to you.
Terrific.
And we can do side by side too, so.
Great. Thank you.
Some of these numbers are rolled up. It is included, but it's in a rolled up form that you can't, we just can't point to. It's within a number, but she can break that out for you.
And it goes to the readability of this report.
Any other questions? Okay, we have a motion to accept the camper report.
So moved.
Pardon? Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming tonight. Back to the regular agenda, citizens' comments. Each speaker will be recognized once and will be limited to a 3-minute presentation on any subject that is not on the agenda. Do we have anyone who wants to speak? Yes, sir. Come up and give us your name and address.
My name is John Hanzik, 103 22nd Street. I'm going to make an assumption the city clerk is responsible for promulgating the agenda. Is that a yes or a no answer?
The city manager puts together the agenda.
Is there a statute, an ordinance that requires promulgation so many hours, days before the actual commencement of said meeting?
normal circumstances to get it done either the Thursday or Wednesday before the meeting, but exigent circumstance might slow that down. If there's things that have to get in there, I'll let the city manager answer.
Yeah, we issued the packet to the council members on Wednesday before the meeting.
Okay, so the council gets it at Wednesday.
Yes.
When do the citizens get it? Via the website.
It's typically uploaded the same day or the next day. Now, this one, Patty, when did you have it uploaded? Was it Friday? You know?
Packet was,
Wednesday night, I know that.
packet was on, it was on the front page like usual. I must be out of turn.
Granted, that's true. The link to the agenda or the notice of the regular council meeting was on homepage. So I scrolled down to set a meeting, looking for the agenda at 7 o'clock yesterday morning. It wasn't there. I don't want the packet per se. I just want the agenda. Because I'm not going to print all that information unless it's pertinent to something I may bring forward at a council meeting. I just want to know what the agenda is. Now, I've lived in HOAs where by Florida statute, the notice of a meeting has to be posted with the agenda. It's either 48 or 72 hours prior to the meeting.
Right.
All I'm saying here, folks, is this agenda was not available on the city's website, homepage at 7 a.m. yesterday morning.
We'll have to check that, but I know it was uploaded on Friday.
Okay.
Thursday or Friday.
Thank you.
Might have not been separated, but it was the agenda pack.
Thank you, sir. Any other citizens' comments? Yes, sir.
Fred Elliott, 2202 Donato Drive. I just want to say to John and to Wanda, thank you very much for your time on the board. It's volunteer time. You don't get that much love from the city that often, and sad to see you go, but we'll see you out here. Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Any other citizens' comments? Seeing no one else, we'll close citizen comments. Item consent agenda, items 5 through 9. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Pardon?
Did we approve the minutes for the last meeting?
We kind of glossed through the
They are in the consent agenda.
We kind of glossed through the approval of the agenda, because I would like to pull a couple items, so if
Okay,
I
that's.
can do it right now.
Yeah.
I would like to pull 8 and 9 from the consent agenda.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve 5, 6, and 7 of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Second? On the roll call? Do we need a roll on this roll call to approve these? Okay, all in favor of approving 5, 6, and 7 on the consent agenda?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. 5, 6, and 7 are approved. Item number 8, authorizing the city manager to distribute bonus funding for the FY 2018-19. Lynn?
Yes, this is a request that we talked about at the work session. And basically what I'm doing is asking for authority to do that based on what we put in the budget originally as far as different bonuses for different people, based on their merit.
I'm an advocate, I have no problem with that. I was just wondering if the process will include some feedback to the council saying, as a city manager, I've approved bonuses for these people for these reasons on these dates.
Yes, I can bring that back to you, that's okay.
It just kind of closes the loop on the final.
Okay. Do we have a motion to authorize Lynn to distribute the bonus funding?
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion? All All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved. Number 9, authorize the city manager to execute a purchase order for stormwater drainage repairs. Lynn?
Yes, this is a request to, we've got a problem with, near the address of 3103 Crystal Cave, where the pipe is collapsing, causing, it's an outfall, and it's in between two homes at that location. And what we're proposing to do, off the Hillsborough County stormwater bid, is to slip line that. We had a couple contractors look at it, possibility of maybe trying to raise the pipe out of somebody's backyard. Does not seem feasible, and this will maintain the integrity of the pipe.
I have a motion to authorize the city manager to execute.
I had one question, the reason why I pulled it, and it may not be directly related to this project as much as the stormwater backflow preventers. Some issues have been raised by citizens to make sure that proper risk management's been applied to kind of look at the safety aspects of this thing and make sure that we're not hanging it out too far with respect to the people are properly outfitted safety-wise, been briefed on how to do the job, have the training, and we've considered the safety aspects of this thing. I just wanted to make sure you had an opportunity to address that and allay those fears for...
Well, this is a company that does this regularly. It's not, they're responsible for the safety and integrity of putting it in. What they'll do, if you'll look at the proposal they gave us, what they will do is they will clean the whole pipe all the way from the manhole. They'll do take care of traffic control. They'll do cammering of it, and then install the slip line.
Okay, so we're not installing any of this.
No.
So far as the other valves that we have installed and are going to install, proper risk management's been applied to...
Yeah, we're not going to put valves in that we don't think we can handle. As an example, one of the valves that you approved us to buy on the consent agenda on 13th Street, there's no way we can put that in. It's too big for us, so we're going to have to get a contractor. And currently, we are getting prices on a contractor to install it. We're trying to help with the simple things, things that, one or two persons could do. We don't have the capability to put in a 24-inch valve. So we're limiting that capability. The other valves that you also approved are for projects that's coming up. Instead of us doing that through the bid process for the contractor, we're going to buy the valve, and then we're going to provide the valve. They're just going to give us a price to install it. So again, that should save us some funding there. So that's where we're at. I mean, we put the valve in on 12th. Everything's fine. And recently we put a smaller valve on 8th Street. But the pipe's only, I think it was like 12 inches, very small pipe. So our drainage puts between two houses. The pipe was clean. We put it in. And actually that day we even had the Wade Pro people out here with their engineer during that installation.
Okay. So you're just allaying my fears that there are concerns about somebody being injured or applying all the proper safety protocol.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I wanted to make
We're
sure.
not going to do anything we don't think we can do just because it saves us the money. That's not feasible, and it's not good for the employees.
Okay, you've answered my questions. Thank you.
Any other questions regarding this? Okay. Do we have a motion to authorize the city manager to execute the purchase order for the stormwater drainage repairs on Crystal Cave?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's authorized. Item number 10 on the regular agenda, consideration of resolution 2019-01. Resolution of the City Council approving our Bel Air Beach strategic plan and establishing an effective date. Do I have a motion for resolution 2019-01?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Discussion.
I have a couple of questions. First of all, will the plan, as presented here, be posted on the website?
Yes, we're going to add some pictures and things to it, but yes.
Have you thought about publishing it in maybe a nice brochure to pass out to the residents?
Well, that's why we're going to clean it up with some pictures and things. Yeah, and there's, I believe it's on, we're going to actually do a matrix that we're going to provide to the council by May 1st for each of the objectives with who's responsible for them and the proposed timeline that we present to the city council. But this is a living document, and Vice Mayor spent a lot of long hours on it and helped build this outside of the, how many council work sessions did we have? At least, what, we've talked about this for probably, what would you say, Vice Mayor, 6 months?
Over 6 months.
At least. And, this is a preliminary, it's a living document, and we'll present this going forward. These are the objectives for 2019, and then we'll present it to whoever the new council members are after the election. And they will, we hope, will carry it forward, and at that point, they'll look at objectives for 2020.
On page 5, under the strength under small city staff, flexible, responsive, streamlined, how about cross-trained? I know a lot of the staff are cross-trained. Should that be something that's identified as a strength?
I guess we could slip it in there.
I guess it could. I mean, it's basically all covered under best value for the tax dollar, objective 3, I think. It talks about.
That is kind of why I backed it up into here,
That's just a quick edit. If no one has any issue with that.
But if we're talking about that, I do have an issue with page 7, item 8, sea level rise. There's no hard science to prove that that's an issue, and I don't think we should have it in print because it's, kind of, again, pushing an agenda that there's no hard science to.
We have state and county committees working on it already.
Yeah, but does it need to be in our?
We need to be working with them.
That is up to the council.
I don't see item 8 as a scientific statement. I see it as an outcome. So if sea levels do rise, it will have an adverse effect on the community. I don't see that as a statement of science or a
Sea
statement.
level rise will have an adverse effect on the community. That's stating that there is sea level rise. And I have, if I'm going to vote for this, and if we're making modifications, we should maybe reword that.
If there is if the sea level rises, it will have an adverse effect on the community, something to that effect? Is that what you're?
Maybe the change in tides or something like that. Because certainly we have tides that affect the inflow of water into our storm system.
Storm surge, for one thing, at high tide is pretty bad. So.
Yeah, I think the wording was chosen not to address the issue or merit of climatic change, but that sea level rise. I mean, the county has basically identified this as an issue and done a study, and this was just to align basically with the county. So how much, how quickly, it was kind of left in nebulous terms there, but if it is, and maybe that's the best way to address it. If sea level rise is a issue, then it's going to have a long-term adverse impact. I can live with that.
Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, that's fine.
document.
I was very happy with it, thank you.
Yeah, right, okay, we have a resolution to approve the strategic plan. We have, do we need a motion to change, along with the change regarding sea level rise?
Make a motion to approve resolution 2019-01 with approved modifications.
Okay, second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's a very long process. Whatever there.
Since 1950.
Yeah.
Mayor?
I would look that one. Pardon?
Mayor, it's a resolution, can I do a roll call vote, please?
No.
Yeah, please.
Councilmember Bean,
Aye.
Councilmember Harper,
Aye.
Councilmember Petrowski,
Aye.
Councilmember Strayer,
Aye.
Councilmember Shirley,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dunn,
Aye.
Mayor Notaro.
Aye. Resolution 2019-01 passes 7-0. Okay, 11 we already did. Number 12, review of city clerk evaluations and consider compensation and bonus.
Councilmember Weston.
Madam Mayor, point of order.
Yes, sir? Come to the,
I didn't
yes,
hear.
please.
John Hansick, 103 22nd Street. Agenda item number 10 has two parts. You've approved the strategic plan. You have not voted on its effective date. I've heard no discussion on an effective date. That's why I rise to challenge.
Okay. The resolution passed and adopted this 4th day of March 2019.
Okay, another point of order. The motion should have included the effective date to have been a valid motion.
Paul, do we have,
Points of order come from this council, not from the public. That's number one. Under Robert's rules. Now, the effective date of this, I assume, is going to be the adoption of this resolution. So I understand what the issue is, and I would remind the distinguished gentleman that points of order come from here, not from there. If you want to rise and speak to an item on this agenda, that's what the law says you're allowed to do.
All right, sir, if I may continue, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not an attorney. I am a parliamentarian, have been for 10 years. Points of order in my organization, according to Robert's rules, can come from the floor. If the governing body, there's a question about the validity, if you will, a member of the audience or the delegates, in this case, we the taxpayers.
Let me interrupt you so we don't belabor this whole point. Number one, this is a representative form of government. That means these folks here represent the citizens. This is not an association where each of you are members of an association whereby you can implement Robert's Rules of Order. If you come over here on the 18th, Ms. Butcher over here will be glad to give you a great orientation, notwithstanding your parliamentary background, on how this applies to a unit of local government. It's distinguished from an association that you may have been a member of, whereby each of you are members, and as such, you have certain rights to object to what your officers or directors do in that association. Little different in government.
I understand that, sir, and I defended that representative government for the better part of half my life, so I get it. But I wasn't clear about the effective date.
it's in the resolution.
You cleared it for me, Mayor, thank you.
Okay. We're on to the review of the city clerk's evaluations and consider compensation and bonus. Now, I know we've all gone through the progress reviews. Some people have updated them, added more comments, things like that. I think the issue is, do we have anything to add to, would you like to bring forward before the council regarding the evaluations? And then we need to talk about compensation and bonus. Any comments on the evaluations? Everybody did their own things. Compensation and bonus. We just approved authorized the city manager to distribute bonus funds to the employees who report to him. And the funding, when we did the budget, was taken out of the individual departments and put in non-departmental. So we do have the money there. It's been put aside. So looking for suggestions on compensation bonus for the city clerk. I would suggest that we give them the 3%, which was in there originally, that we had put in the budget, would be my inclination. I believe that's what was in the budget originally.
Do you need a motion for that?
I'm just, yeah, need a motion.
I make a motion that we provide a 3% increase for the clerk.
A bonus or an increase?
Increase.
In pay? Merit increase?
Merit increase.
Yes.
Increase or bonus?
I said increase.
She said increase.
Increase. Okay, we have a motion for a 3% increase for the city clerk. Do I have a second for that motion?
Yeah, second.
Okay, discussion.
Any discussion on that item?
Okay.
I'm going to speak to the entire issue of this merit increase versus a bonus. One of the things I've learned in my brief contact with the city is that we have a short memory. So let me go back and review some issues here. Before the prior city manager, Nancy Gonzalez, retired, she put through an increase for the city manager based on the new hire and compensation for her replacement. The city manager hiring committee, headed by the mayor, had some strong consideration for our current city manager, William Reeves, who was then the public works person, because he advocated being able to wear both hats as a city manager and as a public works, which figured very strongly in his consideration for moving from interim to the full-time hired position of city manager. So, with the exception of one vote, the city manager was hired, Lynn Reeves. Within 3 months, the public works position was backfilled. And in fact, with the approval of the council, a second full-time position was created on the basis of reorganization. We all kind of figured a reorganization was a good thing. I'm not sure we fully considered the impacts of the pay and the budget impacts of it. Based on the spreadsheet provided by the city manager at the last council meeting, our total personnel cost for this city for fiscal year 18-19, which is the salary as well as all the benefits, $657,000. We really need to get our arms around pay, salary, and benefits in this city. It's not a sustainable thing if we start giving merit increases, which continues to compound over the life and career of a city staff employee. We just approved Resolution 2019-01. And I would like to go back and refer to a couple things there. The resolution itself reads, whereas the strategic plan shall be utilized as a foundation and standard such that all aspects of Bel Air Beach management, planning, budgeting, and business shall be evaluated for alignment with goals and objectives set forth in the strategic plan. And then I call attention to Goal 2, which is best value for the tax dollar, Objective 3, which is continuing to invest in our human resources and the city staff. Review and update the city personnel manual. Job descriptions, accountability, qualifications, training and development, evaluations and compensation. If you go to the current city's personnel manual right now, section 8.7 is the only place that even discusses or talks about evaluations. The forms we're using for evaluations, I don't even know where they came from, and nobody in the city staff can answer that question either. My recommendation is that we consider perhaps a bonus, which is not a long-lasting, recurring compounding of salaries and benefits, until we can actually follow through on Objective 3 and look at qualifications, job descriptions, accountability, and compensation. So while I appreciate the good work that the staff's doing, I don't think we have a full comprehension of the impacts of the evaluation process and the impacts on our budget. So I guess what I'm saying is I will not support a merit increase, but I will support the consideration of a bonus at this time. That's all I have.
So our last discussion at the workshop was specifically around the idea of merit bonus, with the idea that we would have time at that point, we would then have that opportunity to evaluate the process as it integrates into the capital budgets, the annual budgets, and the long-term proposition. So I would support a merit bonus with the idea that the council has an opportunity to evaluate the process and to evaluate the forms. There seems to be a lot of consternation within the council's evaluation process, primarily because of the form and its origination and what generated that overall structure. So I think the council has every right to evaluate the process and to modify it moving forward. So I would say as an interim, I think the merit bonus would be a route to take while we have a chance to understand better the overall process and make sure that we all agree upon it.
So, question, when you talk about a bonus, to me when I got a bonus, it was like, here's a check. A merit increase gets spread over 12 months or whatever it may be. Is that what you're looking at doing? Giving them a check now for the bonus?
That's the way it works, right, City Manager?
Yes, Vice Mayor.
And we discussed this at great length when we had our work session, and I thought we were all on the same page. The purpose of going through the exercise of relooking at the evaluations was because many on the council did not make one comment on their evaluations, which I don't know how you can give everyone across the board an excellent score without backing up that review with some sort of comment. So I think that's what we were seeking, was some sort of feedback, so that in this process of potentially hiring a consultant to help us with our HR issues, kind of trying to have good job descriptions and performance reviews that really apply to their job description, that would help us in that process. And I think that just was buying us time to get to that point, and doing a bonus was what we all agreed on at the work session, so I'm not sure why we were going back.
We agreed to take the funding out of the salary increases and put it over into the other slots so that bonuses could be considered. We didn't say we were only going to get bonuses at that point. And I read through all of the addendums that came through, and I thought Patty got a fairly high score, since we're only talking at this moment about the city clerk. I thought the reviews came through were fairly consistently high. And my experience of 8 years working with Patty has been, she's very responsive. She does not just the job that one would expect of her, but she's taken on other roles as well, such as the rental of the community center, and she's handled that exemplary manner. And yes, a salary increase is something that rolls forward, and frankly, I think we need to do what we have to do to keep good staff, and she's one of the best city clerks in the area in my mind. My exposure to them over the last few years.
I would agree with So we have a motion on the table for a salary increase, I believe. Can we get a second for that?
John.
I would like to amend that motion for consideration of a merit bonus, Vice.
I don't accept a friendly amendment. I don't think that's a friendly amendment, that's going to have a separate amendment after the vote, or separate motion.
Do we have a second for the salary? Okay. All right, so that's what's on the table now for a salary increase. Any other discussion? Okay, Patty, would you call a roll on the motion to give the city clerk a salary increase of 3%?
Councilmember Bean,
Aye.
Councilmember Harper,
Nay.
Councilmember Petrowski,
Aye.
Councilmember Schwer,
Aye.
Councilmember Shirley,
Nay.
Vice Mayor Gunn,
Nay.
Mayor Notaro.
Aye. Motion passes 4-3. Next item is review of the city manager evaluations and to consider compensation and bonus. Comments on the evaluations? I have a motion regarding compensation or bonus for the city manager. A motion for compensation or bonus?
I would make a motion for a merit bonus.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay. Would that be 3%? That appears to be what we've been, would you want to put a number in it? 3% I believe is what we had in the budget originally.
3%.
Okay, and a second down there, okay. Discussion on a merit bonus of 3% for the city manager.
I've already touched on all my points. I basically believe that when we backfilled the public works, there was a de facto pay increase, and he's done an exemplary job of moving issues through the city, and I give him great kudos for that, but I think he's been compensated.
Okay. We have a motion for a 3% merit bonus for the city manager. Patty, would you call the roll, please?
Is that a merit bonus or merit increase, Mayor? I'm
sorry,
a little
pardon?
confused here.
Bonus.
It's a bonus.
Oh, bonus,
For
okay.
the city manager. Okay.
Councilmember Bean,
Aye.
Councilmember Harper,
Aye.
Councilmember Petrowski,
Aye.
Councilmember Schwer,
Aye.
Councilmember Shirley,
Nay.
Vice Mayor Gunn,
Nay.
Mayor Notaro.
Aye. The motion passes 5-2. Item 13 on the agenda, authorize the city manager to sole source the purchase Clearworld Retroflex solar streetlights. Lynn.
Mayor and Council, this is a request to authorize execution of a contract. It's in accordance with our street lighting standard that we adopted last month and at the February 4th meeting. This is for Bellevue States Island. It's with World, it will be solar lighting. It's for an amount of $159,646.90. And part of this, the city will provide the 10-year rental contribution as part of that. The rest of it will be paid for from assessment. The Clearworld lights have a 10-year warranty. They're estimated, I spoke to Clearworld last week after they signed the contract. They've already executed the contract. You have a copy of that, also in your packet. They're estimating 120 days from now to get get the lights in here, get them installed. And we do have a penalty if they don't succeed that. However, of course, there could be rain delays or things of that, weather delays that you can't put it in, but we'll coordinate with them along with the underground project. So I ask for your approval to move forward. One of the residents on the Citizens Committee, Steve Marsh, really whittled them down. And this turned out to be a great price. And I know Mr. Goldman's here. He's totally aware of this because I met with him and Mr. Saganik over the last 3 months. But I think we've got a good price here and an opportunity to move forward with this project.
We got such a great price on it, what would be considering to do it on the rest of the city at that low price?
We haven't calculated that at this point, and this is for 31 poles, so we did a calculation on all the poles in the city. It would be probably in the millions. So, but the street lighting standard that we adopted last year gives the opportunity for other areas of the city to, if they want to participate in the program, to use solar instead of Duke Energy in the city.
Do we have a motion to authorize this manager to sole source the solar streetlights?
Mayor, could I ask a question first?
Sure.
Lynn, as we purchase these light poles, are these considered city assets?
Yes.
And are depreciated, or how is that handled on the books?
Now, they're considered city assets, and we will insure them. The insurance on them annually is about $700 a year. So
Each?
No, not each.
Excuse me, Mayor, shouldn't we have voted on this before we open the floor up for questions?
Motion seconds, I think is
We're
what I
asking
said.
for a motion, yeah. Okay, we have a motion to authorize the city manager to sole source purchase these solar streetlights.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Okay, so, did we get your questions answered?
Yes.
I have a question. What was the estimated maintenance cost on this per year?
Well, it's a warranty. It's got a 10-year warranty. They provide the parts, and if there is any maintenance, of course, either the city staff would have to do it or we'd have to contract. But there is no, and I mentioned this previously, there is nowhere that these lights have been 10 years that we could get a good number for that. Most of them are relatively new. I spoke to Pompano Beach. They had a few of them. Miami was going to do this for some period of time, but because of the cost, they chose not to move forward at this time, but they're still looking at it.
And how long are the batteries good for?
They're supposed to last a little over 10 years. Right, so I think it was 13 if I remember right, something to that nature. But the warranty covers all the parts, and that would.
Is that installation also, or if something's wrong, they send us the parts, we fix it?
Yes. Or we hire a contractor if we can't do it.
Now, what are they made of? Is it hard plastic, or is it?
It's I would say it's like almost like a
Kind of composite?
composite type pole. They have 100, they're going to give us the wind calculations, so I think we're okay there.
What about with the salt air and just the sun beating on them all the time? Have they
We've
ever had any set
Based-
in other areas?
Based on what I've been told, the places they've been put, they've been fine. And we've had a temporary one, or I'll call it a trial one for 8 months. I had to go to it one time in that 8 months to make an adjustment to it. Because I was blasting light out for, so it kind of changes the thing. And that was just a matter of going up Bluetooth and fixing the light right there. In fact, Mr. Goldman tried to run me over when I was doing it.
We won't be paying Duke Energy, energy for the energy or for the rent on the lab.
Any other questions of me?
Okay, we got a motion to,
One other question, just as a, just to recap, the city is obligated to pay how much of that, do you know?
It's about 46,000. I'll get a good number, you know, you'll know what that is, but what we agreed to do is pay whatever it would cost the city to rent 31 poles for a 10-year period, because that's the warranty system.
it's what we would have paid for Duke anyway.
Right.
And then they're picking up the.
And we're picking up the maintenance, you know, our labor, or whatever, city's gonna pick that up also, because all they're providing is the parks.
I'll make note for other neighborhoods that might want.
Bring me your check.
Okay, so we have a motion to,
Yes, on the audience.
sir, yes, sir.
Mike Dershowitz, 102 8th Street. It always makes me a little nervous when we sole source anything. What is the advantage to the city of this sole source motion you're about to pass as opposed to competitive bids?
Sir, this is a patented project, and they have the patent on this project. And by state law, if there is a patent, or if there's only one place you can get these, that's, you're allowed to go bypass the competitive bidding process.
But there's more than one provider of solar streetlights. What I'm asking is why a set of specifications wasn't prepared and put out to multiple sources as opposed to negotiating with one party that may have a super light and buying it sole source without the benefit of competitive bids.
Well, first of all, this was a unique circumstance in that the neighborhood was doing their undergrounding, and there were many light options presented to that group, and this option was the one they selected.
If I'm not mistaken, there was a group that researched it and got pricing from other competitors, and they were able to narrow down who to buy these lights from based on, and that search was done by the resident group, not by the city, because the resident group is ultimately paying for this, not the city.
Thank you.
Okay. Any questions, comments? Okay, we've got a motion to authorize city manager to go forward with this. Do we want to? Okay. Do we need a roll call? Okay.
Councilmember Dean.
Aye.
Councilmember Harder.
Aye.
Councilmember Wachowski.
Aye.
Councilmember Schwer.
Aye.
Councilmember Shirley.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Gunn.
Aye.
Mayor Notaro.
Aye. Authorization passes 7-0. City attorney, Paul, comments?
No, I don't think so. Just want to remind everyone about March 18th that Jackie Burcher will be presenting the government in sunshine, the public records, the ethics, and some issues dealing with parliamentary procedure. She hopes to do that in an hour. It'll be fast moving. She's been working on it and it'll be ready. So I just want to remind everyone. And anybody would like to come, please do.
We'll put that on the website to advertise it.
It's already up there.
Okay.
The agenda isn't, but it's been up there.
As there, before you bring the gavel down, I'd like to say a few words.
Okay. We pass. City manager reports. It says city manager, but okay. Monthly financial report, Melanie.
Good evening.
Evening.
We are going to be presenting the January financial report. My very slow computer. January puts us, 4 months into the fiscal year, and that means we should be at about 33% of budgeted expenditures and revenues. And that's close to exactly where we are. In the general fund, our revenues are we worked so hard before the meeting to make this smooth before you got here, of course. Here we go. Revenues are at 50.33%, and they've been high all year, and that's because of the FEMA grant reimbursements and the ad valorem. Expenditures are right on target at 34.46% for the operating expenditures. And then when you add the transfers out to the capital projects fund, it brings those expenditures up to 40.56, but the general fund is right on target. The marina fund is revenues in at 43.18%, and that's because we've gotten a new slip renter with a larger boat, so we've got higher revenues than anticipated when we originally did the budget last year. Expenditures are only at 7.33%, and that is because of all the same capital depreciation. Those in the transfer to the general fund don't get done until the end of the year. Capital projects fund revenues are 110.9%. Again, that's due to the reimbursement grant for Gulf Boulevard beautification and higher than anticipated interest income because of the loan for the undergrounding being vested in the SBA until which time we need to utilize those funds. And expenditures are at 145.56%, and that's for expenditures that were budgeted and rolled over from prior years that are now being coming to completion with Gulf Boulevard beautification, stormwater projects, and whatnot. When we look at the cash and investments for the end of January, this page is for the general fund, and you can see we have almost $3.5 million. We've got items that are designated for $1 million for the disaster fund that can't be touched. The items in yellow are CDs, which are available but not readily available, and the balance in green is what's in cash or money markets that can be utilized easily. Then we have the same thing for the Marina Fund and the Capital Projects Fund. And when you look at all of the funds together, you've got $7.199 million, and the bar graph gives you an idea of how much is non-spendable, how much is in CDs, and how the green that we have that's available for immediate use for operating expenditures and capital. Any questions so far before I go on? Any questions? Okay, and then the summary of the restricted funds, those items that you're seeing in the red bar graphs for the general fund, like I already touched, $1 million for the hurricane, and then we've got 85.5, which are accumulation funds for capital within the general projects fund. The Marina Fund, as Lynn had spoken to earlier, we've got $22,500 that we've got set aside for capital in the Marina Fund. And of course, the entire balance of the Capital Projects Fund is spoken for. And this is a detail of the items and the revenues. As I've already spoken to, ad valorem grants are higher than anticipated, as well as miscellaneous and Next big item is licensing grants, and that's a timing thing. Those are all due by October 31st.
Melanie, I do have a question back on that last slide. The community center rentals and miscellaneous are well ahead of where we expect to be. Are those things that you expect to be front-loaded as opposed to evenly spread over the year? Or are they just going to be high all year?
Community center rentals is a composite thing. The fitness center rentals are actually higher than anticipated, and that's because we have a new fitness class, and the yoga class seems to be doing very well. She usually has a fun class, so that's high. The rentals for the center itself are not doing really as well as we anticipated, and a lot of the funds that you're seeing there are funds that we actually received paid in advance last year. Those were accruals. New rentals coming in. I'm not seeing a lot, and Patty could probably speak to what we have coming up in the future for rentals. But that's what that is.
Okay, thank you.
When we get down to the expenditures in legislative, all of those are very close to being right on target. Information technology is almost always a little bit lower, and that's because David's very slow at sending his bills in. But everything else is pretty close to being right on target for the expenditures. And this is the same for the Marina Fund. Like I said, the boat slip revenue is the only one that's significantly higher than anticipated, and that's for that larger boat and that slip. The expenses are lower, and we've talked about this before. The reason that operating expense is higher is for the payment of a year's worth of insurance on the Marina. Capital Projects Fund, that's just, we got a lot of stuff going on. We had a whole lot budgeted last year, and some of the work didn't really start to come in, particularly the undergrounding both for Gulf Boulevard beautification, the undergrounding along Gulf Boulevard, the stormwater that's coming in, and the seawall repair is what's creating that overage in the expenditures there. But those are all budgeted items. They're just rollovers from prior years. And again, that's just a pie chart of how the money has been spent so far this fiscal year to date. And again, 80% of all the funding that we spent has been for capital projects. We have 6% for salaries and benefits, personnel costs for the city, and 14% go to operating costs. Here's our capital projects fund schedule. This first page is basically, most of it is just the rollover accounts, the accounts that we're accruing for larger projects. So there's not a lot of activity in this first page here. The second page is where we've got stormwater, seawalls, Gulf Boulevard beautification, and underground. This is where the big money is. As you can see, we rolled over almost $4 million, and we budgeted another 1.2. And in the green column is the amount that we rolled over, that we budgeted, less what we spent so far. So to the right, that gives you an idea of how much we have left for those projects for this fiscal year. And over in the far right, those are just boxes of POs and projects that are still outstanding that were actually encumbered last year. I just wanted you to know where those funds were still at. So if you're comparing prior year's reports to this one, you're going to see the funds rolled over from prior year. Normally, the budgeted schedule in green would have been carried over to October 1, but I added back in the POs that had not been spent yet. And then those same POs, which are detailed out on the right, are in the outstanding POs column. Any questions on the capital?
I have a question going back to your salaries and benefits of 6%. When I compare that to the revenues, I mean, you can't throw the capital income as, it's really 15%, not 6%.
How are you calculating?
If you're looking at the revenues versus what you have as salaries today.
This,
I think you're
this
throwing
pie
in
chart
capital
is-
projects as well.
This pie chart is expenditures only. This is not revenues.
Okay, I'm sorry, I
This
thought you
is
said it was a
only-
percentage of revenue, I got it.
No, this is a percentage of everything that we've expended here today.
Okay, I get it.
Any other questions? Thank you very much, Ellen.
Sorry, no pictures this time.
Okay, city manager comments.
Yes, Mayor and Council, just to kind of give you some updates on really the only project that's ongoing right now is the seawall. If you've been down there, I expect that to finish in the next couple of weeks. They were actually forming the last section of the cap to put on today. Then we will get a contractor. We're going to do that direct ourselves to do some backfill in dirt and then put new sod in and irrigation. So that's going. 3rd through 5th Street, the survey work is being done currently. Larry's still working on the design. Next week, I'm going to put together a letter to send to the undergrounding residents, kind of updating them on some dates and things of that nature. I'm going to meet with the consultant here probably Monday of next week, and we're going to settle those, and hopefully oh, he's gone already. I was going to ask Mr. Goldman about a meeting next week, but we'll do that too. I already told you about the 8th Street, the easements I told you about. The feasibility study I mentioned earlier that the county's putting together, they've already got a consultant for what Mayor Queen was talking about. The staff will have, we're already prepping for hurricane season. We have Web EOC training in the end of March and first part, and then a hurricane exercise in May. Pinellas County is putting together. Pinellas County is going to start sending out letters. We were working on the renourishment, and we're going to have to get beach easements for some areas. Mainly, it's almost where the dunes are on our beaches. That's the easements we're going to have to come up with to get ready for the next beach renourishment in a few years. So they're trying to get a head start on that. Duke currently is working on,
Can I ask you what those easements are going to be used for?
because they have to be able to put sand on them, so they've got to have the easements to work in that area.
They sort of changed the rules. Maybe we get Andy to come to one of our next meetings to explain it.
Yeah, that would be good, because what I envision, if they're gonna use those dune areas for stockpiling sand, and they're gonna kill all the,
No, they're not. Part of that dune area, as Andy and John Bishop explained to me, is the area that we don't control ourselves, and it's part of that area that, actually, I guess, the condos in our case, they own that. So we just need to get an easement. Doesn't totally mean that there's going to be a bunch of sand dumped there. It just means that the beach renourishment program is requiring those easements that they obtain them now. Never had to before.
Yeah, it would be nice for him to come explain
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Duke is working on upgrading the lines between 8th and 9th Street that are behind the houses. There's a lot of, I guess I'll call them Band-Aids on that line strand. So they put a new pole at 7th and Gulf and 7th and Harbor, and they're going to shoot something down 7th Street and then come back above ground and replace those wires back behind 8th and 9th Street. CRS certification, which is your flood insurance, that's going to be due May 1. We should get the letter of what we're going to have to submit by the middle of March. I gave you a copy of the local mitigation workshop. It's coming up March March 21st from 6 to 8, and it's open to the public, and they're, it's very interesting. It helps us with our CRS credit. We work together with the county because we don't have the staff to do all that wellness mitigation strategies. I've given you the code enforcement report. It's pretty standard. A lot of compliance. People have taken, when Laura's went and talked to them, for the most part, people have started complying. And I want to make you aware that we're doing some research, but there are some covenants that were evidently put on Bellevue Estates Island back in the 50s. We're still trying to find out what enforcement of those, because there's various things in there that could be different than our city code. And if those covenants are still at stake. What it says basically is they were set up for 20 years and they automatically extend for an additional 10 years unless they're terminated. And we haven't been able to find anything that says they're terminated. And the only time you can terminate them is at the beginning of each 10-year cycle. So we're trying to resolve that issue, and I've asked Paul to look at that.
What would be the impact of them if they are enforced, to be enforced?
Well, they would have stronger, in some cases, they have stronger covenants than our codes, which could have an impact. In essence, I guess you could say technically they kind of have a homeowners association, sort of.
Well, and it creates within each tract that was developed or set up with the clerk's office and the county, each tract, the developer had different restrictions and limitations. They do not apply to the city, they only apply to the people that were within that tract of land. So in essence, that whole 22nd Street corridor becomes a quasi homeowners association. I've already told Margaret I think he'd make a great president of the homeowners association. But
So has anybody been enforcing those covenants?
No.
I remember the covenants when I first lived on Donato and saw them. Didn't affect me personally. I wasn't making any changes that were in contravention to those covenants, so I didn't even pay much attention to them. And quite frankly, have not paid much attention to them because those are enforceable by the property owners, not the city. As you will see, or we've pretty much finalized, I'm going to get together with Jackie on this rough draft she gave me about a legal opinion on this subject. It'll be available to you probably in a couple of days, yes, Jackie? Yeah, it'll be available to you. So there's no obligation on the city's part. But keep in mind that the duties and responsibilities regarding the enforcement of restrictions and covenants rest with the group of property owners within that particular tract that was subdivisions. That's the word I was looking for earlier. Subdivisions and recorded.
Do we know if any of the other subdivisions have covenants out there that we hadn't been aware of?
I don't know, but I suspect there might be. Jackie, did you run across that?
I
In your
haven't tried
research?
to research property records on that. You really have had time to try to pull all that up.
Wouldn't that information be available to the property owners on their title policy? And should they have not known that at the purchase of their property?
They absolutely should.
Well, I can tell you that, and I just looked at the two Board of Adjustment hearings that are coming up, and just looked at their deed, and it's, how it's written, it's kind of, I'll call it ambiguous, because it says something to the effect that they were kind of reserved the right to any and all covenants, but it doesn't talk about it. It just talks about covenants or restrictions or stuff. It doesn't say what they are. And the research that was done was, how this kind of came about was, as all of you know, we had issues with with Duke Energy and the easements, and based on the first read of the covenants, if they wouldn't want to enforce that, then there wouldn't have been any way that Duke Energy could have put a transformer on the property, because it says such things as you can't have any barns, you can't have a tent, you can't have this, you can't have that. I think you can have 2 dogs. They're kind of interesting because they were adopted in 57. So, but that's a moot point with Duke Energy now, because we were able to accomplish it another way. And I guess it was, how would I say it, unanticipated consequences that we even found these. And I know some of the homeowners have them. They've been given, I guess, passed down. We haven't found anything that says that they were rescinded, but
Well, I don't see how the city has any responsibility in this.
we don't.
We don't need to be involved in this. This is that community's covenants, and it's their responsibility as property owners to maintain them or not maintain them. City doesn't need to be involved in it.
That's absolutely correct, and that's the first answer to the first question that Ms. Bircher has already posed on this.
I just wanted to make sure we had nothing, because our codes are different than what some of the covenants say. We're only enforcing our codes. The homeowners association, it's up to them. So we just want to make sure and that's why I'm passing that on. I don't think there's going to be an issue, but it's.
So we're trying to find an answer to a question that nobody's asked.
Right. Well, no, we've asked the question of, what my question was is, okay, if there's a covenant there, and my question to Paul was, does the city have to enforce the covenant or against our code, or do we just enforce the code?
No, it doesn't.
He's
I'll
answering.
tell you that right now, right based on what I have in my own.
We're out of the woods, that's where I'm at. Now, whatever the group of residents wants to do, different story. And that's really up to the residents.
I guess that's my point. Nobody's asked a question or raised an issue.
It came up, as you said, with the Duke easement, does this affect us or not? And the answer basically was no, but it was something that we had to pursue to see if it did. You know what I mean?
But I want to make the council aware that we had done our due diligence as far as we were concerned. Last thing I've got is, we got a little letter that we sent to all the council from the Board of Adjustment about changing codes, because they feel there's going to be a lot of variances for this one item. I don't know what the council's pleasure is. I will tell you, we've only received one variance for this specific item. The current variances that are coming in 2 weeks are not about this item. So I guess the question is, what does the council want to do with that? Leave the code and let people ask for a variance if they want it, or go change the code because of, one variance that was requested?
How many other variances have been similar to that, and how many can we anticipate? Is that something that?
We don't know, and we don't know how many to anticipate. I can tell you what the current variances are, but they don't relate to that.
I guess my point is, if it's something that would come before the Board of Adjustments and they would grant a variance, something that they're liable to grant a variance on, we're causing homeowners to spend a lot of money to request the variance. And my suggestion would be to change the code to alleviate those potential costs, if they're liable to get the variance anyway.
Well, the specific issue is an exception to the 45-foot length of dock, right?
Right.
And at the time we had the work session for code reviews, this topic came up and it was discussed. And I think at the time, the consensus was, this is a stranger kind of occurrence. It's not something that's running repeatedly through the system, so deal with it on a variance process rather than change the codes.
I think to be clear though, it's not about the length of the dock as much as it is the lift poles. If we're allowing tie-off poles to be at 55 feet, then the lift poles should also be allowed at 55 feet. You know, because whether the vessel's in the water or on a lift, it's the same situation. The vessel's going to be 55 feet out or beyond, especially with a sailboat, because they tend to go far beyond that 55-foot tie-off pole.
From a committee perspective, I think we had addressed this as part of it was navigability, part of it was location of a particular situation, and my recollection is that we agreed to take this as a case-by-case situation.
And maybe have a marine engineer review it and make a recommendation. Again, if this is something that ever comes up to where you're seeing more of it, and it's costing the homeowner to come in and apply for the variance, I'd look at taking the cost away from the homeowner.
I think one of the items on the city manager's laundry list is a follow-up to the code review we just went through, because obviously there are some unexpected consequences that have come up to changes in the code. So on his laundry list, he's got to come up with a process on some frequent basis to review the existing codes to see if some alternative actions are required.
I agree.
Yeah, I'd like to see a trending report from variance and the different committees of what's, if a committee meets in the course of a month, I'd love to hear a summary from that committee during the council meeting so that it's on public record and we know what's going on. But I think anything dealing with repetitive trends to that point should be open to modification if it is a trend.
A report, you know, like from
Well,
the Board of Adjustment is to.
I mean, we can, you know, submit to the council every month what happens and, you know, what the agenda items are for the variance. I know we have 2 on the 14th, and we have nothing for April, I can tell you that. We haven't had any submitted. We had 1 last month, but that was on a setback. And then we had 1.
Yeah, it just happened to be they got hit with a bunch of dock questions, but they were all different. I think in that situation, I think the reason the Board of Adjustments suggested bring it to council was because it was a double standard. You can allow a tie pole, but you can't allow a lift pole. It doesn't make sense why you have one boat allowance but not another. So they're the same vessel in the water, one just lifted, one sitting in the water. And, you know, on a sailboat, it's acceptable at 55. On a boat, or even a sailboat might be on a lift, but on a lift, it's not acceptable. So that's why I think the Board of Adjustments had requested that we take a look at it.
And then the last thing, I know some of you have seen the street lights built at Causeway. Those were installed a week or so ago. There's still one on each corner that we put up. One is up. Unfortunately, the one on it would be the northeast corner, when they were drilling to put the pole in the ground, they hit a water line and we got that flood. So I know that it appears that the water line has been fixed. I don't know if they're still waiting for parts, but they'll come back and finish that. But I didn't want you to think we're getting half
I
a
saw
pole.
the light, but no
So, and I'll be on vacation Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday.
I have a question. When will the cross wires on Gulf Boulevard, when's that project going to be completed?
I hope by later this year. Bright House is going to start their process very shortly. Duke is in the design phase, and we still have some easements to get from Bel Air Shore. And, but we're working on those, and we've got quite a few already.
I had somebody ask me about the lot on the corner of 25th and Hibiscus. Did they get their variance for their lot line?
No, it was denied, and he did put the pilings in.
I saw that.
And he was in here today. Someone came and talked to me about that. I guess he's wanted to change his design again, so we'll see what happens with that. But no, it was unanimous. They turned that down. And thank you for the bonus. No.
Patty, do you have any comments? No one? Dr. Ward wanted to say something?
Thank you, Mayor, for the time. Almost 30 years ago, I moved here in Bel Air Beach, and I've seen many councils come and go. I've seen little progress in Bel Air Beach until the last 4 or 5 years. And I think we are making progress, and we are destined to become the best little beach community in Tampa or in Florida. And I hope that all of you will continue to make progress toward making this the best community. And all of us should be proud of what we've done so far. And it wasn't that way to begin with. For 15 years or so, or 20 years, that everybody was at the status quo and not looking to the future. And I hope that all of the council people, mayor and all, will be looking to the future, what we can do to improve our community even more. And I appreciate the time that I have spent here in Bel Air Beach. And I want to thank the present council for what they've done. Look forward to the future. The gentleman that spoke first on South Boulevard Underground made a very good point, and I hope everybody will consider that, because that will improve the looks of Bel Air Beach. Thank you very much for all this time.
Thank you, Dr. Ward.
Can I say something? Dr. Ward,
Yes.
I want you to know how much we appreciate you and how much you've been a role model for other citizens. Your perseverance and your involvement has been appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Unfinished business.
Lynn, just a question, how are the walkways going? Between First and Ninth and 13th, right?
That's one of our objectives. I did get the paper surveys, and I've sent those out to you, so you kind of have them. And if you happen to gander around them, you'll see that there's some encroachments that we need to resolve. There's about a 16-inch encroachment. I believe it's like it's 2nd or 3rd Street with a fence, and there's a couple other small encroachments, but we need to work those out, and then we'll come up with a conceptual plan, project plan for that, and then bring it to council and kind of get some feedback, see what you'd like to do going forward.
And the other thing, I know we're going to be running into a warm season here shortly. And I'd like to sit down with you and talk about the AC systems in the building.
Okay.
So whenever you have some time.
Anything else under unfinished business? City council comments.
I'd just like to say this is my last official meeting. It's been an honor and a privilege to serve this community, and I hope we keep striving to go forward. Thank you.
spring break. I think everyone felt it this weekend. Not that we get to enjoy it, but just a quick question. Do we have greater control of that light, or are they doing anything to extend or delay the light service here at traffic time?
Well, we did put up right turn signs and things of that nature, or the county did, I requested them. They are the controller of the light system based on the camera. And I've talked to them many times about that, and they have assured me that they monitor it as necessary.
Clearly they don't. So.
I can talk to Tom Morrisburn again and see where he's at with that.
Yeah, it's painful. I mean,
Oh, I know it's
we all the
painful.
pain. It's a little easier when you're heading south on Golf Boulevard, but when you're heading north, in both directions, it's backed up depending on the day, the time or what have you. So it's really painful. And again, Wanda and John, thank you for your service, and I'm sorry to see y'all go, but thanks for everything you've done to help us with council and help us get acclimated as new council members. That's it.
I would encourage everybody to download the coffer that was discussed and voted on tonight. I think there's some really, really good information in it. In particular, I was really happy with the statistical sections. If you're looking at a 10-year view of the community, the age, the community, the taxes, there's a lot of really good information there. So if you're interested in the numbers, I think it's a really, really good read. I'd like to also comment on the strategic plan we talked about tonight, and that is that it is a living document, and the intent is to lay a foundation, and then as the new council comes on board, it'll be reviewed, and again, we've modified, and we'll go forward from there. So I look forward to the idea of having a strategic plan in place and giving that longer-term vision, especially as it talks about projects and capital. I would like to thank John and Wanda for your service. It's been you've been good role models, and I've enjoyed working with you, and look forward to continuing. And then I would encourage everybody to vote. Next Tuesday is the day to vote. If you haven't already put in your absentee ballots, so I encourage you to make sure that you get out and do the vote. So thank you very much.
Again, John, Wanda, it's been a pleasure. I've kind of been in and out of here for a number of years, and it was great working with you, Wanda, especially here with all the time that you spent on this code review committee. Really appreciate that. And Lynn, another comment. We had a generator at one time, and I think now with the new phone systems or a lot of the things here at City Hall, when the power goes out, you lose communication. So maybe sometime in the future we could have a workshop and talk about a generator for a building, so that when power goes out for, say, a week at a time, at least you'd be able to work in a comfortable area, plus use the phone. Okay. And that's it. Thank you.
I'd like to also express that it has been an honor and a privilege to serve the city of Bel Air Beach for the last 8 years. I've enjoyed working with all of you, and I keep telling everybody how much fun it's been being on council with the city of Bel Air Beach, because we have such a great staff, and I really appreciate everything you guys have done to help us get to where we are. And I agree, Dr. Ward, I think we've made a lot of progress in the last several years. And thank you all for participating. I have loved the fact that we have more residents turning out, probably in the last 2 years, than I saw in the first 6 years. So thank you so much. And I'm not going to go away. I'll be around.
So are you done? Yeah. Okay. Interesting you bring up the traffic. City manager and I kind of brainstormed and kicked around some ideas with that park on the corner there, and only one lane going northbound. You got 3 going southbound with the left turn lane. A thought is to possibly carve through that park there, put in a continuous right turn, and modify those 3 southbound lanes so that you can incorporate a merge lane for the northbound lane. So he's going to be talking to the traffic people and see if there's any possibility of expediting expediting traffic through that likely northbound.
Take the crosswalk out.
Okay, strategic plan, congrats, it took us 69 years to get here, but we've got a strategic plan. For those of you who were able to stay awake to page 12 of 13, you've probably already read this stuff, but I'll hit it for those who may have fallen asleep. We set some stretch goals in there with a planning horizon of 3 to 5 years. The council should articulate some what we call stretch goals and objectives. And we just brainstormed and threw out a couple ideas. One might be reduce city expenditures 5% by the year 2025, eliminate the CIP backlog by 2025, Gulf Boulevard utilities underground by 2023, citywide street lighting. Anyway, we're just looking at some things to really dangle a carrot way out in front of us and maybe start thinking about the big stuff. Evaluations and compensations, that's a goal and objective. Page 13, under conclusions, it was written in the strategic plan. The benefits of a strategic plan are well established in government and business. However, the ultimate success and benefits of the Bel Air Beach strategic plan is absolutely dependent upon the commitment and self-discipline of the Bel Air Beach leadership team. It must become the sanity check and litmus test for all planning and decision-making, such as does this task support and align with our goals, and is it being given its proper priority? And the only reason I bring that back is to make sure we're not already walking back on the strategic plan if we start talking about compensations, bonuses, and merit pay increases. I'm a little dismayed that after approving the resolution in the strategic plan, we just made a long-term binding budgetary commitment on the city of Bel Air Beach with a merit increase. And that was based on anecdotal opinion instead of informed, responsible business decision-making. I just want to make sure that we understand what this strategic plan really means and that we're committed to it. We understand and how we're going to employ it, not just walk it back and just, hey, rubber stamp it because it's the management technique of the day. So, thank you.
Thank you. I too would like to thank John and Wanda for their service. It's been a real pleasure these years. Don't leave, hang around. You've added a lot, both added a lot to the council and to this city. A couple of weeks ago, I had an opportunity of working with the Florida League of Mayors for a Habitat for Humanity project up in Clearwater Beach. It was very, very interesting. Building a house, putting down solder. It was a very interesting project for a very worthy cause. At the Big C, Lynn brought up the question about easements for beach renourishment. Andy Squire and John Bishop will be sending out letters to all of the beach communities are affected by this new easement situation, and they will be sending out letters to the cities, which we will then distribute to all the beachfront property owners, regarding what the process is, why we need to do it, how we need to go about it. So we should have some more information on that. We'll try and get either Andy or John to come to, once we get that letter, to get them to come to a council meeting, or maybe hold a meeting for all of the beachfront condo owners as to why this is crucial that we do this. Other than that, I don't think I have anything else. Motion to adjourn? All in favor?